I was kicked out of the army unfairly. They thought that would break me. Now I train the very people who once tried to sabotage me. And they don't even realize why their hands trembled during the first training. When the letter came, it didn't feel real. A white envelope, thin, official, cold. Inside, a few printed words that ended 7 years of my life. Discharged. Conduct unbecoming of an officer. Unbecoming? I'd bled for that uniform. I'd led missions no one else wanted. I'd watched friends die and still came back for more. And they threw me out like a piece of broken gear. The worst part? It wasn't even my fault. Someone higher up, a man who couldn't stand that I questioned his orders. He needed a scapegoat. And I was the easiest target. I remember walking out of base for the last time. No salute, no goodbye. Just the sound of my boots echoing on the concrete. Each step felt like a nail in a coffin I didn't build. For weeks I was lost. I'd wake up before dawn expecting roll call. Then realize there was no mission, no squad, no purpose. Just silence. And silence is dangerous for a soldier. It lets your demons speak. But somewhere in that darkness, something hardened inside me. They thought they'd buried me, but they'd just planted a seed. I started running again. Not for the army, for myself. Every mile was a way to burn the anger out of my chest. Every push-up, every rep in the gym, was a promise. I'm not done. I spent days researching, studying tactics, psychology, combat training. If they wouldn't let me serve, I'd teach others how to serve better. I built a small program. Nothing fancy, just a rundown warehouse and a few volunteers. We called it Iron Discipline. At first, nobody came. Why would they? To train with a guy the army kicked out? But one night, a young recruit showed up. Nervous. Desperate. He said, "They say you're the best, even if they don't admit it." That kid changed everything. Word spread. More recruits came, then cadets, then officers, until one day the very institution that expelled me sent their men to train under my program. I stood at the front of that class, the same badge on their shoulders that once condemned me, and smiled. Because I knew something they didn't. You can't destroy a man who has already been through hell and learned to love the fire. The first day was brutal. Drills that broke their lungs, mind games that tested their nerves. Some of them cursed under their breath. Some collapsed. But when they looked at me, when their eyes met mine, there was something in their stare. A flicker of fear, like they felt my story without knowing it. And I liked that. Because revenge didn't have to come with bullets. Sometimes it came with silence. With a calm voice that said, "Again." With a lesson so hard it left them shaking. With the knowledge that their pain was being measured by the man they'd once betrayed. That night after the training, I sat alone in my office, the same cracked walls, same worn-out desk, and stared at an old photo of my unit. We looked so proud, so sure of ourselves, so blind to how easily loyalty could be bought and sold. I picked up the photo, traced the faces with my thumb, and whispered, "I'm still here, still standing, still fighting. They took my rank, but they'll never take the soldier out of me." A few months passed. The training center was growing, faster than I ever expected. What started as a forgotten warehouse now echoed with the sound of boots, commands, and discipline. Every scream, every drop of sweat, every broken limit, it all felt like redemption. Until the day he walked in. I noticed him right away. Tall, sure. Confident, too confident. His name tag said Harris. A name I could never forget. The same last name as the officer who destroyed my career. Colonel Richard Harris. The man who signed the papers that ended my life. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. But then I saw the eyes. The same cold, gray eyes that once looked at me through a disciplinary hearing. And said, "You're no longer one of us." My pulse slowed. My breathing steadied. And inside my chest, something ancient and bitter came alive again. He didn't know who I was. Not yet. He was just another recruit. Young, cocky, thinking he already knew everything. Perfect. I decided then, this wasn't just another trainee. This was the beginning of my real mission. From day one, I pushed him harder than anyone else. When others ran 5 miles, he ran 10. When they crawled through mud once, he did it twice. And every time he looked at me with anger burning in his eyes, I saw his father's face staring back. He hated me, good. Hate builds strength. Hate is fuel. I knew that better than anyone. One night, he confronted me after drills. His voice cracked from exhaustion. "What the hell is your problem with me?" he shouted. I just smiled and said, "You remind me of someone I used to know." He didn't understand. Not yet. But the truth is, I wasn't trying to destroy him. I was testing him. I wanted to see if he was made of the same weakness that ruined his father, or if he had something better inside him. Week by week he changed. The arrogance faded. The discipline grew. He began to lead the others, not because he was the strongest, but because he was finally humble enough to learn. And watching that transformation, it did something to me. It confused me. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure if I wanted revenge or redemption. One evening, I was closing the training hall when I found him sitting on the floor, alone. He was holding an old photo, a younger version of me, with Colonel Harris standing beside me. He looked up and said quietly, "You knew my father." I froze. There was no point denying it. "Yeah," I said. "I knew him well." He stared at the photo again. "He always said losing you was his biggest regret." I didn't expect that. Regret? The man who ruined my name regretted it? The kid continued. "He told me you were the best soldier he ever had. But you questioned an order that would have gotten men killed. You were right and he knew it. But politics." He hesitated. "They needed someone to blame." I sat down beside him. The warehouse was quiet, just the faint hum of the lights. And for the first time in years, I felt something heavy lift from my shoulders. I'd carried that hatred for so long. Fed it, trained it, lived off it. But hearing that, it was like finding a letter you were never meant to read. One that said you were never the villain. The next morning I gave him the hardest test yet. Not to break him, but to prove him. And when he passed, when he stood there breathless and shaking but proud, I saw it. The same fire I once had before they took everything from me. He saluted me. "Thank you, sir." I didn't respond right away. Then I said, "Don't thank me. Just remember, strength isn't about revenge. It's about control." He nodded. But I knew he didn't fully understand yet. Maybe one day he would. That night, I opened my drawer and pulled out the discharge letter. The same one that once burned like poison in my hand. I read it one last time. Then I tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. I realized something that night. Revenge might build you, but forgiveness sets you free. And as I turned off the lights and walked out of that training hall, I smiled for the first time in years. Because the man who once lost everything had finally found himself again. A few weeks later, a black car pulled up outside the training hall. I knew the sound of that engine, government issue. Old instincts kicked in before I even turned around. Two men in suits stepped out. One of them carried a briefcase. The other, a folder with a red seal I hadn't seen in years. "Mr. Cole," one said. "The Army wants to speak with you." I almost laughed. The Army. The same machine that threw me out like garbage was now sending its dogs to bring me back. I said nothing, just gestured toward the office. Inside, they laid the papers on the table. Contracts, signatures, ranks. The same words I once believed in. "We've been watching your work," the taller one said. "Your training center has produced some of the best recruits we've ever seen. Command believes you should come back. Instructor. Lieutenant. Maybe even captain. With full reinstatement." He said it like it was a gift. Like they were forgiving me. I leaned back in my chair, studying the emblem on the folder. The eagle, the stars, the motto I used to whisper before every mission. Honor. Duty. Loyalty. Funny how words lose their meaning once you see what hides behind them. "Tell me," I said slowly. "What changed? Why now?" The man hesitated. "Your former superior, Colonel Harris, he recommended you personally." I didn't respond. Not right away. My mind flashed back. The courtroom, the signatures, the silence. Then the son's words. He always said losing you was his biggest regret. So it was true. Even in his silence, the old man carried his own ghosts. And now they were trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. I stood up, walked to the window and looked out at the training field. The recruits were running drills, my drills. Every shout, every push-up, every ounce of discipline came from my design, not theirs. This wasn't the Army's creation anymore. It was mine. I turned back to them and said quietly, "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not coming back." The room went silent. The shorter one frowned. "You're refusing reinstatement?" "I'm not refusing," I said. "I'm choosing." They didn't get it. They never would. Men like them only understand power when it comes with a title, a uniform, or a paycheck. But the kind of power I had now, the kind that comes from losing everything and still standing, they'd never taste that. The taller one finally said, "You'll regret this." I smiled. I already did. Years ago. And that was the end of it. They gathered their papers, muttering something about protocol, and left. The sound of the car faded into the distance. Later that night, I stood alone on the field, watching the recruits finish their final test. Among them was Harris's son, stronger now, sharper, more focused than ever. When he saw me, he saluted. I nodded back. Good work, I said. He grinned, breathless. You taught me everything, sir. I shook my head. No. I just reminded you of what was already there. As the lights dimmed, I looked at the horizon. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. Just peace, the quiet kind that comes when you stop fighting ghosts. They took my uniform. They took my name. But they could never take me. And as the night wind brushed against my face, I realized, sometimes revenge isn't about destroying them. It's about becoming someone they could never break.